Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the delay. I think we've had some issues with traffic congestion getting into the venue, but welcome to this session on investor targeting and proactive investment attraction. The context for this session is really around the background of FDI flows globally have been decreasing. The competition for getting FDI into any country is getting more fierce, more competitive, and countries are competing more to attract investment into their countries. The governments and the investment promotion agencies that are winning these projects, they are out there proactively identifying, targeting, and bringing investable opportunities to investors to bring them into the country. Today's discussion is going to focus on perspectives shared from several investment promotion agencies around the region, as well as investors and the private sector working with investors to bring them into countries. So why investment promotion agencies? Why are we focusing on them in this session and on how they are proactively attracting investment? Put simply, these are the agencies that are mandated by their governments to go out there, find investors, convince them to come into a country, bring them into the country to find a site to set up their operations, and then also work with them to set up those operations, and more importantly, to keep them in the country and reinvesting in the country. Today's discussion is going to focus around three key themes, assuming that we have enough time because we're running a little bit late. The first one is really going to be talking about what are the agencies that we have with us here today doing to get out there and proactively attract investment? Then we'll be hearing from the investor perspective. What is it that investors actually want when they're investing in a country? What can these agencies be doing to attract that investment better? And then finally, we'll be hopefully touching upon the importance of positioning Central Asia as a region for investment. We've got a great group of panelists here with us today. We've got Mansurjan Razulev, the Director of Investment Promotion at UZ-IPA, Yerten Yelikiev, Chairman of CaEX Invest, Dilshad Yurazoda, Director of Taj Invest. So these are our three investment promotion agencies and the heads of them. We've also got with us from the private sector, Mariam Kavyava, Managing Partner at Savvy, Konstantin Polinin, Director and Partner at Boston Consulting Group, and Juan Pablo Garmendia, Senior Emerging Markets Analyst at StoneX. So let's get started with the first theme of the session, really focusing on what is proactive investment attraction? What does that mean? And what are the investment promotion agencies that we've got here with us today doing to implement proactive investment promotion? So Mansur, let's start off with you. UZ-IPA has gained recognition for reforms and really started implementing an increasingly sophisticated investment promotion system. What specific tools or strategies have you been working on that have been most effective in identifying, targeting, and bringing in investors into Uzbekistan?
Thank you for the question. It's a question I hear a lot. What are they, in our opinion or from our practice, the most effective tools to attract foreign investment? And if we talk about the toolkit that the investment promotion agencies use around the world, it's pretty much universal. We're talking about the outreach events, we're talking about roadshows, investment proposals, investment facilitation through consultation support. So that's something that everybody does, right? So, but I wanna emphasize on something that some governments do not focus enough, and that's something Uzbekistan was very successful in. So when we started this reform journey back in 2016, 2017, before doubling down on investment attraction through the classical toolkit, we started with the very important exercise. We thought, what is the biggest challenge, what is the biggest barrier for the foreign investment in Uzbekistan? Let's find that elephant in the room, let's address that elephant in the room, and only then start working with investors, start talking to them and attracting them to Uzbekistan. And that elephant in the room back in the days in Uzbekistan was with limitations for foreign currency exchange. So for those of you who are not aware, back in the days before 2017, you were not able to freely convert your revenues in Uzbek sums into foreign currency to repatriate your profits. Well, that's an obvious barrier that would prevent any investor from investing to Uzbekistan. So before creating the investment promotion agency, before establishing a Ministry of Investment, we first address that challenge. And I want to urge everyone who is considering what type of activity to invest their time, resources in, before you do, ask yourself, are there elephants in the room, such as this, that you should address first? And then start testing different tools and see which one works best for you.
Thanks, Mensur. I also think it's really interesting to bring in the important point of what I see in the work that we do with a lot of investment agencies across Asia and the Pacific, not taking the perspective into account of what is limiting an investor from coming in and how can we address that challenge. So let's move on. Yertan, Kazakh Invest has executed a highly targeted approach in sectors like deep grain processing and coal chemistry. Can you walk us through the steps from sector diagnostics to investor engagement that you've been doing and what you've learned from doing that and how you're implementing it further?
Yes. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, guests. First of all, thank you to the organizers for this opportunity and for bringing us to all together in such important and timely forum. It's a pleasure to be here and share our experience from Kazakhstan. Let me start with a light joke. You know, countries like Kazakhstan and our neighbors in Central Asia, we all share one thing in common: no access to the sea. But we have learned to live with that and even make advantage. If others are surrounded by water, we're surrounded by opportunities. Nature gave us vast land, rich natural resources, and most importantly, a mindset that is pragmatic and strategic. Our neighbors, Kazakhstan, is working hard to build open and competitive economy. We see ourselves as a natural bridge between East and West, especially between Europe and China. Since independence, Kazakhstan has attracted almost $500 billion US in FDI. We account for around 43% of all FDI in Central Asia. Our top investors include China, the US, South Korea, Switzerland, and Netherlands. Now let me explain how we approach investor targeting and Kazakh Invest. Last year we launched a proactive program to attract investment into two sectors: deep grain processing and coal chemistry. We look at deep grain processing. We analyze Chinese market. You know that we have border with Chinese, and we try to identify what kind of agricultural products in 10-15 years will be deficit in China, and look at our competitive advantage. And we found several things. First, it's a corn, and the second, it's a grain. We understand that due to new technology and innovation, we can, through biofermentation process, we can produce up to 260 products based on corn. And we found interesting fact that within 10-20 years, it's going to be deficit in Chinese market. And the same logic we used for coal chemistry. You know that Kazakhstan have reach of coal, and due to innovation technology, due to, I would say, new technology, we can produce from coal even plastics. So we prepared investment proposals based on this analysis and created short list of companies to target. We didn't stop outreach. We invited them to Kazakhstan, organized meetings with the government, regional office, site visits, and consultation. Kazakh Invest supported them throughout the process with the land selection, project structuring, government incentives, tax preference, and legal guidance. As a result, last year, one of the biggest biofermentation company, which called Fufeng, it controls about 50% of whole monosodium glutamate market. They started construction in Kazakhstan, project with total capex about $800 million US. The second company, Turkish company, Tiryaki Leading, already started construction with total capex $350 million. In coal chemistry, we advanced talks with CHN Energy. CHN Energy #1 is the world in coal chemistry. We right now discussing project with total investments about $5 billion US. Because this model has worked, we are now expanding it. We have hired international consulting firm to analyze other promising sectors, including agribusiness, renewables, and so on. Now a few words about Kazakh Invest and why our model works. We're a national investment promotion agency reporting to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This helps us connect with international partners easily. Our board of directors is chaired by the Prime Minister Republic of Kazakhstan, and we serve as the executive body of Government's Investment Attraction Council. We also call it investment headquarters. So this investment headquarters is a special body led by First Deputy Prime Minister, created to support strategic investors and solve project issues quickly, case by case and directly. We fully provide support from business planning to land allocation, tax incentive, investment contracts, and long-term assistance. Let me close by thanking our host from Uzbekistan. Once again, platforms like this help us share ideas, build trust, promote and Central Asia as a unified investment destination. We are connected by history, culture, geography, and together we can build something much more stronger. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ertan. For those of you in the room that aren't familiar with how investment promotion agencies work and the work that they do to get out there and find investors, I think what Ertan has just shared is a really good example of what it looks like to develop a targeted attraction strategy where an agency isn't just out there saying, my government's priority is to attract more broadly investment in agriculture, but really narrowing it down to figure out what is it, the specific niche sector that my country has the most opportunities to attract that investment in, and then how can we get out there and find the investors that are most likely to come into our country. So it was a wonderful example, thank you. Let's shift gears a little bit now and turn over to you, Marian. So you're doing a lot of work working with countries to advise them on investing in countries and also connecting them with these investment promotion agencies. I've got a bit of a challenging negative type of question for you. What do you see for most investment promotion agencies in terms of what they get wrong when they're reaching out to investors, and how could they be doing a better job of connecting to investors and providing them the information they need to convince them to come into a country?
Thank you, Heather, for the question. Assalamu alaikum. I'm grateful to be here with you today at Tashkent International Investment Forum. So today, it's not a secret that all countries try to attract value-creating investors, not that just the investors who will come to the country, build residential houses, take all money back and leave to the other country, right? So we want to keep value within our country as much as possible and as long as possible. So in this regard, we, personally, I and my company were actively working with investors to show them new countries, emerging countries, prospective countries for their business extension or just completely greenfield opportunities. What we see as a mismatch from time to time is that, let's imagine there is a product, yes, and there is somebody who produced the product who is looking for a customer. For me, the producer in this case is the investment promotion agency that's trying to sell the product, which is the country, to the customer, which is the investor. So, and in this case, mostly what we see is the mismatch in how we communicate our value proposition and what are the tools that we consistently use in order to show the commitment from the investor side. And just very briefly to touch the point, what are today that investors are really looking into the new countries? Of course, it starts with like political stability and investment security. Everybody talks about this, and I won't deep dive into this. But there are three additional points that, from my perspective, are very important. Number one is the availability of the quality data in the company, which means that whenever the investor is serious, the first thing he is going to do, most likely he will do the research, market research, or a feasibility study. And in these cases, mostly we face the difficulties extracting high quality real data in the country. The second is the workforce, and today it's important to understand what is the real capacity in specific sectors. And it's also important to mention that a lot of IPAs, successful IPAs globally, are offering specific programs in terms of talent development. And in some cases, at the setup stage, IPAs act as a semi-strategic HR consultants, we can say. And the last thing that I would like to mention today about what the investors look for, it's the availability of a competitively priced and long-term financial resources within the company, both debt and equity. Why? Because today all investors want to maximize their return on equity, which means that can be only achieved if we leverage wisely our business. So that's from my side. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Marian. I think you brought up a really great point about, the communication mismatches that often happen. I think also what we see is that in those conversations, initial conversations with investors, often really taking the perspective of what is it exactly that the investor wants in providing that information to them, rather than just the broad pitch of this is why my country is so great. And all of that does indeed rely on having that data to provide to the investor the right type of data that they want, and also the workforce type of data that they're going to want, and providing that in a timely way to the investors to really bring them over the line once you've seen that they're interested in coming. So let's move over to Dilshad from Taj Invest. Dilshad, Tajikistan is often seen as a niche but high potential destination for investment, especially in sectors like renewable energy and agribusiness. What steps have you been taking at Taj Invest to really change the agency to become more proactive in getting out there and bringing investors into the country?
Thank you so much, Hiter, for your question. Thank you for all of you for being here. So many thoughts. I don't know starting from what, but what we are doing, we are creating such kind of platform with your support, with ESCAP support. We are making step by step, becoming the platform where we can discuss all tools, mechanisms, because there are a lot of things to discuss. And from yesterday's message of the Mr. President of Uzbekistan and Prime Ministers, I understand the one important thing, that Central Asia, it's a new investment destination for all around the world. It's not about Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, or Tajikistan. It's about Central Asia. So it's something like new, interesting destination with 80 million people. So that's why we, as Tajikistan, as a small Tajikistan, but with big ambitions, we are trying to find our own way. And when we find our own way, as Mansour said, we are starting with the question. So what we can do and what is the problems of investors. And when we starting to search the problems, sometimes we understand that it's about competition, but we do not want to look to our neighbors as competitors. Why? Because all the companies, investor trading companies who are working in Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan or in other countries, we believe and we know that they will come to Tajikistan as well. Because I know that I have a list of the companies, Uzbek companies, Kazakh companies, international companies, who have plans for next 5 years, and they will work in our market as well. So that's why it's not about competing, it's about integrating. Also, as a Tajikistan, we identify our strong positions. First of all, we are number 8 in the world with hydropower potential. 60% of water starting from the Tajikistan, so it gives us a lot of opportunity. Investment opportunities with creating hydropower station, developing green energy, which is very important nowadays. So we can making data centers. Yesterday, Mr. President of Uzbekistan mentioned that there are plans to make if I'm not mistaken, 5 big data centers. So we can do it jointly because we are doing the same. And all big companies, I mean worldwide companies, maybe 5 to 10 companies. There are not a lot of companies who can do this. And maybe they will more interesting when we talk about the regional approach. Also about investment forums. Today we here in Tashkent Investment Forums, thank you for inviting me. And we talked before, so it's time to make some Central Asian investment forum. Not in Central Asian market, maybe abroad. Let's do it in Italy, let's do it, I don't know, in other countries, because it's more attractive for them. So this is my main thoughts. There are a lot of things. Also, if we talk about value chain, about, for example, agriculture or textile, we know that Uzbekistan doing well in textile. They're selling good via Kazakhstan, with Russian market. So we have cotton. So they're producing this cotton now better than us. So let's do it together. So we can provide them cotton. They can make apparel, and so it's a workable thing. But the most important thing, I think, we have to create the regular platform where we can discuss all these things. Because as for me, as a Taj Invest, as a promotion agency, for example, I do not exactly understand how we can cooperate in money transaction, taxes. So there are a lot of things to discuss. So my main message is, let's think together how we can create the regular platform. I don't know, it's digital, online, offline, doesn't matter. So discuss more and more, because there are really a lot of things to discuss, and we are in a one way. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dilshad. If I can just pick up on one point, I think I really appreciate bringing in that regional aspect to it. One of the issues that has come up with a lot of the investors that we've approached when we're working with some of the agencies across Central Asia is some of these countries are too small to consider them just alone to invest into. So how can we look at Central Asia as one region where we can position all of the different possibilities across these countries and get investors to come in to source inputs? Maybe they're investing in Kazakhstan and sourcing inputs from another country. Maybe they're also exporting to the other countries by investing in Uzbekistan. And also looking at, as you said, investors that are already in the region and really attracting them to expand further into the region. So let's move on. We've heard from our IPs. Let's move on and turn more into the private sector perspective here. So Konstantin, BCG has just released a study really exploring how Central Asia can evolve as an investment destination, and also how they can position themselves as not just competing individually and pitting each other against one another. I'd like you to share a little bit more about where you see the scenarios and potential industries that Central Asia has the most attractiveness over the next 5 to 10 years.
Thank you very much. It's probably one of the thrilling questions, how it will evolve and what are and where is cooperation rather than competition. But thank you very much for that. Indeed, BCG did, and first of all, thank you for being here. For us, it's a privilege to work in all of the countries except Tajikistan yet. So we operate offices in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and recently worked for Kyrgyzstan, so we know the region. And we decided to launch a study to answer specifically the question, does it make sense to invest now into Central Asia, and what is competitiveness of Central Asian countries against other regions? So I was running this study. This is not published yet. And within this part of the study, beyond all the numbers, I also had the privilege to talk to quite a number of investors around the globe with quite an interesting outcomes. Well, we don't compare the studies, the countries, against each other, although we're fully aware that there is a different level of ambitions, different level of maturity, different level of security and economic and institutions. Still, the perception of the region from outside is exactly as you said. So why should we invest into one of the countries? Why can't we think about this region, and where should we invest? thinking on numbers, this entire region is like close to Turkey in population, close to Malaysia in GDP, close to Thailand in FDI and in trades. So if you are a global investor thinking where to invest your money, you will ask you two questions: where to invest and what if. So you consider risk. Definitely, right now, there are stable political and economic regimes right now, and the investment attraction, foreign direct investment attraction is just growing. And congratulations to Uzbekistan for really, really amazing results on that, and also to all of you gentlemen. At the same time, the question is, not only does it make sense to look on the current situation as is, but what will be an outlook 5 years from now, because every investor thinks in what if, which means scenarios. I'm not thinking on geopolitical shocks, and I'm not thinking on whatever, some disaster scenarios which might happen in these parts of the region, so we don't talk about this, of course. But if you think on potential economic cooperation, the key question is, what will it be? Will it stay for outside observer a three-body problem, where everyone is trying to optimize its own situation, but no one can predict where will it be? That's the question. And you can develop trillion of scenarios thinking on that. At the same time, the question how investors are looking, and not only investors, but also funds and governments and private equity, etc., they are not only looking on the countries, they are also looking on neighbors, and they are looking on partners. In other words, with whom are you right now? Because one of the questions, which is definitely on top of the agenda of the global world, is geopolitical tensions, entire tariff war, whatever happens in these parts of the world. And this creates huge opportunities for this region to capture it or to lose it collectively or individually. That's why, and I can continue hours on that, but ultimately, if you think on potential outlook for 5 to 10 years, and try to reduce the number of scenarios to at least 3 or 4 without exploding the number of combinations on industries, etc., we think that potential future of this region will be defined by two driving factors. The one is demand for new strategic suppliers. The other one is disruptions in trades of manufacturing goods. If you think on potential implications of the battle for resources, for talents, and also for disruptions in manufacturing goods, which are going on right now, if you think on trade surplus of China of $1 trillion right now, and potential impacts on what will happen, and also on the growth rate of the region, etc., we believe that parts of these scenarios should be considered by the strategic planning, not only by investors, but also by the respective governments, because they will help to adjust specific focus areas for each and individual country, but also for the cross-country collaboration. Because right now, and I'm about to resume, we don't really see any significant signs of economic cooperation beyond declaration, cultural, security, etc. At the same time, each and single country is looking after each other. What are they doing? What is happening? And what should we learn, and how we present to our presidents outstanding results? If you are a bit outside of the region, and I live in Berlin, you see it extremely sharp. And I do believe that exactly the discussion on the potential cooperation makes a lot of sense, because the capturing of the value of integrated scenarios will provide benefits to each and single country, and also to the investors, by the way. Thank you.
Thanks, Konstantin. I couldn't agree with you more, especially around, the importance of strategic suppliers. I think one point also that Ertan brought up earlier, especially positioning Kazakhstan, that is also relevant for the region itself in terms of positioning Central Asia as a region, is Central Asia is really that bridge between Asia and Europe. And what we're seeing in a lot of the conversations that are happening bilaterally between some of the investment promotion agencies in the region is how can we tap into linking, for example, Azerbaijan linking in with Turkmenistan through the Caspian Sea to provide then oil over into Europe. I think there's a lot of potential happening there, but what has to happen now is to go beyond just the declarations to moving into implementation. So moving over to Juan, last but not least, as someone that's evaluating countries for risk and opportunity, what specific factors do you consider when assessing the investment potential of countries in Central Asia? And what is StoneX doing to help out with this when investors are looking at the region?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here. So, just very clear, as an investor in emerging markets for the last 10 years, I think first of all, people will look at geography, will look at the economics, and try to understand the economic and the geopolitical situation. That will be like a very first step to do. Then you will look at the fundamentals, and then we'll try to make and choose the winners and the losers. So how does the region look like at the moment, right? First, the economic growth has been solid and resilient. Then the external accounts have been benefit from strong remittances and high commodity prices. The fiscal policy is moving in the right direction. The debt side is also looking very attractive, low debt ceilings, low debt ratios, and also high reserves. So fundamentally, the region looks very good. But really, the question that we should be doing is how does this region become a winner compared to the other regions? Because I think I agree with what we were saying at the beginning is there is a fierce competition. And my recommendation would be to focus in two things, institutional strength and transparency. Why institutional strength? Well, institutions are the ones that make the rules of the game, right? So institutions, just very clear, strong institutions safeguard stability, build investor confidence, and also support long-term development. Institutions provide policy continuity and fair competition. And just to give you some examples of how, if I were an agency, what would I be trying to communicate to the investors? First, there is a central bank that focuses on price stability. Second, there is a light tax regime that promotes business entry. There is a labor market that promotes skill development. There is a rule of law, right, that promotes clear protection of the rights of property and also law enforcement. So these kind of things, I think, are the ones that investors will looking like at when choosing the winners against the losers. Now, just very clear. So, secondly, transparency is my second point. High quality and timely data is very important to engage with investors. That will give promote the investor dialogue and the policy credibility. In short, and what I'm trying to say is fundamentals look very good and the region is having a very good momentum. But growing international investment needs a communication with investors that there is a strength in the institutions and also there is a focus on the transparency of the information and the report of the data. Now, what is StoneX is trying to do? We're trying to put investors and try to generate opportunities for our clients. So we leverage from our relationships and from our local engagement with payments, with commodity trading, fixed income trading, also derivatives, structuring, advisory, and try to communicate the right color and the right market data to our investors. We try to help agencies, local agencies, to use our network and our client relationship to put capital and opportunities together. So that together we can help with the development of the country. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Juan. I think you really brought up two important points that we haven't really focused on, and that's around, institutional capacity and also transparency. So it's not just about communicating and providing that right information in a timely manner to investors, but it's also ensuring that the climate that is there is also ready to get that investment. So we are running out of time, but before we wrap up the panel, since we started a bit late, I'm gonna, Mansur?
I think there is a benefit of having a forum organizer on your panel. We have extra 1 hour.
We have an extra hour?
Yep. Is that right? Yes, my team confirmed.
Wow. Thanks very much.
Sure.
I mean, this is the benefit of having Mansur on our panel. We just get that extra hour. Okay, so then let's move into the third theme of the discussion, which is actually around regional cooperation. So Konstantin, I'm going to turn over to you on this one. Before I do, just to give you a background on why we're focusing on regional cooperation. This has come up a little bit in what Mansur has said, what Dilshad has said, what Yertan has said, and also what we've heard in many of the declarations that have come out from presidents on the importance of Central Asia as a region. At ESCAP, we've been working with the agencies that are here with us on stage, but also with some of them that are not with us today, including Azerbaijan and Kyrgyzstan, to really think about how Central Asia can position itself as a region for investment across a value chain and tap into different sectors that each of these countries has opportunities to promote themselves in. Thinking about it along those lines, Konstantin, you've mentioned that the region's external profile is rising. You've also mentioned that investors tend to pit the countries against each other and compare them based on things like utility costs, labor cost, GDP growth. But given the work that you're doing, not just on advising governments, but also investors when they're doing site selection, what are some of the key ingredients that you think are needed in Central Asia to encourage these investment promotion agencies and the governments to be working together to promote Central Asia as a region for investment?
It's a tough question, right? Because all the declarations break against sovereignty of each of the country and KPIs of each of the gentlemen sitting on this panel, right? So there is no incentive for Tajikistan to promote Kyrgyzstan and vice versa at all, right? Because they're in competition, they have a different boss, right? So the few, and I'm sure this type of discussion can never end. Still, I think if you think on Central Asia, what would really help to think on potential analogies. What should it be like? Because only then entrepreneurs, small and medium business, big business, etc., will start to invest in the countries cross-border, which is happening right now, by the way, in logistics, in restaurants, etc., etc. So the small business in Azerbaijan is investing in Uzbekistan and vice versa, right? So this is happening. This is happening why? Because also within the region, small and medium and also private businesses are trying to unlock different opportunities, not only to repatriate their capital, but also to invest where growth is. That's the one. The other one is a joint vision. I had a number of discussions what should be a joint vision, and one of the quotes and one of the analogies I got that it could become something like Eastern Europe of 90s. Boom! You start from post-Soviet situation and then you explode, and now Poland is a driving vehicle of Europe, right? So you can continue this type of analogies. The only problem with this with this perception, with this vision of Eastern Europe, is that you would need an external organizer role for that. Yeah? And I do not think that if any of the countries will select preferred external organizer, that other countries will agree. Now we're back to the geopolitics. That's why the only way to address the three-body problem is to start defining a joint vision on what should it be. On ingredients. On ingredients, because ultimately, if you create a special economic zone in Uzbekistan, willing to attract someone from Azerbaijan and from Kazakhstan, you will have to integrate the processes, the legislation, in order to create a joint market. That's a huge amount of work, given that each and single country is focusing on improving own investment climates and regulations, etc., etc. But I think there is a place for experiments in the special economic zones for cross-country trade. This will end investments, which will facilitate the cooperation. And finally, my final remark is, if you ask investors, not only in the countries, but also in the region and outside, what is needed in these countries, and this is a bit back, and what is needed for the region. One of the radical quotes I heard is, they all have a great face meanwhile. Really smart, really great, each is great. But show me that their kidney and backbone are functioning well. That brings us back a bit from hands regime. Investors don't want to see a person who will take them and help them with the problems. They want to see a mechanism, because the mechanism is predictable. Person can be exchanged, and then you start from scratch. Thank you.
Thanks, Konstantin. I don't know if I would agree with you on the possibility of having any type of legislative cooperation. I think every region around the world, maybe except the EU, but even there are some troubles on how that can happen in reality.
I thought in 10 years from now.
I'm still doubtful on that one, but I do think there is definitely potential to have competition and cooperation coexisting, and it's a matter of figuring out where the cooperation can happen through practical steps among the agencies that are working on getting the investors and figuring out how to position that right. So Marian, thinking about it in that way and thinking about the practical steps around it, how do you think that IPAs can really drive that shift towards regional cooperation while still also being competitors at the same time for investment?
Thank you, Heather. Quite tough question. Why? Because in some countries it's quite difficult for an IPA to have a clear delegated authorities, and sometimes some, let's say, functions are split between the IPAs, the ministers, line ministries, etc. So whenever we are talking about the regional cooperation, it means 10 and more times increased bureaucracy, which means that the time for solving the problems or even the time to make the decision increases substantially. So I think, of course, the region, of course, has the potential of jointly be positioned in the international arena, and this is the right way to do so. And we all understand that it cannot be 100% collaboration in all value chains, because there might be the sectors and the value chains when the competition is necessary, and it is right, because the competition makes you grow. It's crystal clear for everyone. However, the challenge here is that to identify what is, let's say, the first or a second collaboration opportunity, being very specific, quite like super sector specific about it, and create this, call it the experiment of seeing how we function, not across all sectors, but around one. Because it will help us to get the results faster, to see what in this trial needs to be made better, let's say, and improve these deficiencies on the road. And one of the sectors that comes to my mind that's very actively discussed right now globally is the middle corridor, of course. It was renamed to Trans-Caspian recently. Why? Because it affects a lot of countries on the road, like from China to Georgia. There are international IFIs that are committing investments across multiple countries. So this is good, because if there is a cross-country cooperation, around the sector that's already acknowledged to be super important, and that's supported by MDBs, IFIs, DFIs, the governments, and of course the private sector. It gives all necessary ingredients for this initiative to succeed. So any sector that has this, let's say, important puzzles already on place, right, available, I think will make this kind of collaboration even more successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. I like 2 points that you brought up. One is around, this idea of the challenges around bringing in cooperation, and that really, it's the realization that we're sitting here with investment promotion agencies that still have ministries that you're reporting to that are also determining your performance based on how much investment and jobs you're creating through the investment you're attracting. So also selling to your ministries, let us work also with another agency to bring in an investor, is a challenging thing to do. And a good first way to start is start small with something practical. And thinking about it in that perspective, Mansur, you and I have had several conversations separately around regional cooperation and practical steps around it. Can you give us some examples of where you think some of those practical steps could be from an IPA's perspective?
I would disagree with Konstantin on the competitive nature of relationship that is in the Central Asia, especially when we talk between the governments. And I give you a very stark example: Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Although we're brothers and sisters, for a very long period of time our borders were essentially closed. There was little to zero cooperation between those countries. And when we talk about reforms that our president has initiated and supervised, I think the most overlooked reform is the reform in how he was able to drastically enhance the relationship with neighbors. And it's most drastically evident in our relationship with Tajikistan. He made something that is very important. The leadership, they made something that's important. They opened up the opportunities. And yes, investment promotion agencies have a role in actually making sure that these opportunities are taken advantage of. But let the private sector do the rest of it. Here, I want to make a point about the dream that I have. So I have a dream, and my dream is that there will be several giants here in Central Asia that operate across the Central Asia, who will make their IPOs on global markets, and they will outshine some of the biggest players because they have exposure to the most lucrative market. And yes, you're right, individually markets here in Central Asia might not be as interesting as players who have exposure to all Central Asian countries. And Kazakhstan is a great example. They had several successful IPOs with both owned enterprises and private sector enterprises, and this did actually put Kazakhstan on global markets, financial markets map. So our next job is to make sure that our policies, the work that investment promotion agencies do, they facilitate for the creation of our local unicorns and giants who will go out and make successful IPOs. So we shouldn't get stuck on the brick and mortar model of investment attraction. Let's bring factories, let's create, all-style jobs and whatnot, which is important. We continue doing that. But let's look over the corner. Let's look over the horizon. What is the next big thing for the Central Asia? In my opinion, is this disruption of the financial markets globally by bringing in the giants in whatever industry into the global financial markets.
I think also one of the positive signals too are some of the joint country investment funds that are being set up to really facilitate those investments in both countries and really encourage investors that there's co-financing opportunities from the government to really increase that cooperation between the countries. So final question over to you, Dilshad. So Dilshad, what do you think are the most promising areas for regional investment attraction cooperation among the IPAs in the region?
So we talk a lot about investments, but my new fresh idea is let's start with the tourism. So let's start with the tourism because I remember that Central Asia has an initiative to make a common visa for all countries. So all we know that all investors start as a tourist for making investment They have to love the country, love the people, the culture, then start to invest. So the very simple step is start with tourism. I mean, common products. So we are one part of Silk Road. Something promote Central Asia. I mean, as a first step. But there are a lot of opportunities still. If I talk about examples, for example, Coca-Cola works separately with plants in Uzbekistan and in Tajikistan. There is no common thing. They are looking for our market separately. But what doing BYD, for example, they are making plant here and selling to our market. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. Also, yesterday I found that there is a company, wine company in Samarkand, who is searching for grapes in Tajikistan. So it's also a value chain. But what about strong positions of Tajikistan? I mean, we have strong things like young population, we have stable economy, we have hydropower potential, and in this sphere, we can make a common projects with international investors. Thank you.
Thanks, Dilshad. I'm going to add on to your point too and say I think your idea from your last comment about doing a regional investment forum is also, or a regional investment roadshow is also something that would be really useful. So let's wrap up the session. I'm going to put all of you on the spot and request you to make one sentence, one statement, and here is your question to comment on. And we're going to start with you, Juan, and just move right down the line. So you've each provided your thoughts around investment attraction. One, national level, what investors are looking for, what it looks like at the regional level. We've got different perspectives here. We've got the government, we've got the private sector, we've got advisors. If you could ask or suggest something to any of the counterparts that you have with you on stage here today, or those in the audience or with us at the forum, to strengthen investment attraction and potential of Central Asia, what would it be?
Thanks. So I would say use international partners, right? Like we are here, we're trying to do the same in the region. We have very successful relationships in other emerging market countries. And what we have done is put in contact agencies in the locals with all our international clients. We have more than 50,000 institutional clients that are looking to invest in the CIS and also in Uzbekistan in particular, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. Like they want to invest, but they don't know maybe how. They don't have the information. They lack of, I don't know, security, or they don't know very well how is the local environment. And they haven't come to the region, right? So they don't really know what's going on here. So I would suggest use international partners, use companies like StoneX, and we will be more than happy to help you develop and get into your goals. That will be it.
I'll try to be as simple as I can, but it's difficult. But I think my answer is have a common shared vision, or at least elements of that. As a result, there will be a breakdown to the specific value chains and industries where either regional is specialized or is playing with the value chains of the outside world, but in coordinated way.
My statement is, let's make friendship and let's make Central Asia great again.
In one sentence, maybe it is first take care of internal marketing, we call. And in internal marketing, I mean cutting the bureaucracy as much as possible in order to leave plenty of time for more international integration. Yeah.
in one sentence, one thing I would like all of us to do whenever we are thinking about the value proposition each and every country has to offer, let's also think as much about what Central Asia as a region has to offer in terms of the value. And I confess, I don't do that enough, and I should be doing more of that in my pitches and roadshows that we organize.
Well, I think we today here on this panel session, we already done first step. We're sitting all together and starting some discussion. Maybe next step we can sit as a working group and maybe prepare some roadmap. And I fully agree with previous speakers that Central Asia is one of the perspective region. If you look at maybe just couple facts about Central Asia, average age of population 20 years old. Just compare with some European countries. A huge market. Fertility rate, it means how many children you have per female. 3 or 4 kids per female. And if you look at forecast of Central Asian countries GDP growth, you will see double digits growth within 5-10 years. And I think we have a huge potential to work together with other investment promotion agencies here in Central Asia. And let's try make it Central Asia as a one region with many opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you all for being put on the spot and sharing such great insights in terms of next step forward. I think really they're all aligned very well with each other, both in terms of partnerships, shared visions, and positioning the region as one national countries, but also Central Asia as a value proposition with different opportunities across the countries. So with that, I'd like to thank all of the panelists for all of your valuable insights, for your extra time on this session, and also to the audience for your time and attention. Thank you very much.